Yeah.
Can you bring me the red one? The red tea. The red tea.
Inshallah, I will should be. Oh, sure. I'll ask that one. Okay.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So welcome everyone to another installment in our weekly series studying the sermon, where we, as you all know, we revisit the sermon, we recap it, we talk about it in a little bit additional detail, and offer you, the audience, the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to the discussion surrounding the topic, whether that be through offering your feedback, asking questions, mentioning your own experience with the topic, and even critiquing the khutbah if you so choose. And the title of today's khutbah was A Month Overlooked by Many People. A month overlooked by many people. And the main idea of the khutbah basically was to remind ourselves and remind our members of the virtue of continual fasting in the month of Sha'ban, and to encourage and incentivize them to do so. So basically what we wanted to do was talk about the virtues of Sha'ban, and one of the things that we should be actively doing in Sha'ban, which is as-siyam, fasting. And as well as mention some of the things that we would hope would encourage and incentivize them to do so. So that was the main idea of the khutbah. And the khutbah was centered around hadith. Does anybody remember the hadith? Give me, I don't know, you don't have to remember word for word, but does anybody remember the hadith that the khutbah was centered around? Just a general way. Her hadith was one that we used to support it, but the main hadith was the hadith of Usama ibn Zayd. Oh. You guys remember that hadith? It was the very first hadith we mentioned.
You will see the Prophet fast as many days in this month.
Ahsan. So he asked Rasulullah, he said, Ya Rasulullah, lam araka tasum shahr min shuhur, ma tasum min Sha'ban. He said, Rasulullah, explain it to me. I've never seen you fast as many days from any month as the number of days you fast from Sha'ban. Anybody remember what the Prophet said in response? Dr. Ali? Kevin? What? Exactly. Don't give somebody else a chance. Exactly. You can't do everything. You're so generous, brother. I appreciate that. That was very kind of Dr. Ali to pass it off and give one of you gentlemen the opportunity.
Or maybe try this.
I think we said that because my deeds are taken to Allah, so I want my deeds to be taken away.
Ahsant. So the Prophet mentioned two reasons. One of them, as Yunus said, Jazal khair, he said that the Prophet mentioned that the deeds are raised up to Allah during Sha'ban. And I love that when my deeds are raised up, they're raised up while I'm fasting. I gift wrap my deeds in what? In fasting. Y'all see that? The other thing he said was, هذا شهر أو ذلك شهر يغفل الناس عنه بين رجب ورمضان. He said, this is a month that many people overlook. Why? Because it comes between 2 months, which are what? Considered? Holy. Exactly. Holy and highly respected and virtuous and noble. And people pay a lot of attention to these 2 months. So as a consequence, this month that comes between them, people tend to do what? To overlook it. Right? So these were the two reasons the Prophet mentioned. That was the hadith. So we mentioned in the khutbah, we mentioned 6 fawaid, 6 points of interest derived from the hadith related to fasting in Sha'ban. And we're going to reiterate those or repeat those ala ujala. The first one, we mentioned that it was the Prophet's regular practice to fast the entire month of Sha'ban except what? Except a few days. That was the first one. And that's where we mentioned the hadith, or 2 hadith from Aisha, where she said that the Prophet fasted, she never saw the Prophet fast a month entirely, or the entirety of a month, except Ramadan. And she never saw the Prophet fast more in any month than in Sha'ban. And he used to fast the entire month except a small amount. 2 things we take from that issue is 1, continual fasting in Sha'ban is min hadihi. It is from his way, his consistent practice. And the second thing which is related to that, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have the Messenger of Allah, the most excellent role model. The Prophet fasted regularly in Sha'ban. It behooves us to do what? To follow in his footsteps, right? Number 2 from the fawaid. The vast majority of the scholars, we mentioned the khutbah jamahir ulama, and that includes the Hanafiya, والمالكية والشافعية والحنابلة في قول. They've interpreted the hadith to mean that fasting as much as possible in Sha'ban is highly recommended and virtuous. Number 3 from the fawaid. The Prophet said in the hadith, ذلك شهر يغفر الناس عنه بين رجب ورمضان. That is a month overlooked by many people which fall between Rajab and Ramadan. What the Prophet is telling us here is that when you busy yourself and you are mindful, you busy yourself with worship and you are mindful in the time where people are typically heedless, that is a quality Allah loves, and He gives rewards. He gives more rewards for the deeds that are done well in those times. And we gave the example from Ibn Rajab. It's like praying Salat al-Fajr in the congregation when most people are sleeping. Or most people, at the very least, they're not even, the last thing on their mind is getting out in this cold weather, getting in their cold car and driving 15 minutes or 20 minutes to the masjid. Right there. That's just not in their mind. When you do that, you get what? You get more reward. Right? So that's another benefit that we can take from the hadith regarding fasting in Sha'ban. Number 4. This fasting in Sha'ban is similar to the rawatib, the voluntary prayers which are associated with the obligatory prayers. So just like you have a prayer that precedes the obligatory prayer, for example, 4 rak'ah before Dhuhr and 2 after. 2 rak'ah before Fajr, 2 rak'ah after Maghrib. You have these rawatib, these sunnah prayers which are associated with the obligatory prayers. And those prayers are the most rewardable voluntary prayers. They're more rewardable according to the scholars of Islam. They're more virtuous and more rewardable than the night prayer. Similarly, a fast which is associated or connected to Ramadan, which is the fard, the obligatory fast, is going to have the same virtue. So the fast we do in Sha'ban and the fast that we do in Shawwal, because they are connected, they serve that same purpose, and they make up for the deficiencies. They make up for the deficiencies in the obligatory fast, just like the rawatib make up for the deficiencies in our obligatory prayer. Now, think about that, number 5 from the fawaid. Since our deeds are going to be raised up in the month of Sha'ban, we should want to do lots of good deeds in Sha'ban, because this is the month where our deeds are going to be raised up. And the best deed, or one of the best deeds a person can do, is fasting. As the Prophet said, he said, he said, fast, because there's no equivalent to fasting. There's nothing like fasting. And last but not least, from the fawaid we mentioned, the khutbah, is that good deeds performed in conjunction with fasting have a superior status. You get more reward when you do a good deed while you're fasting than doing that same deed while you're not fasting. Giving charity while you're fasting, more reward for it. Visiting a sick person while you're fasting, more reward for it. Offering prayer while you're fasting, more reward for it. You see that? And so these are the benefits we took from the hadith and what the scholars said about the hadith. There's some lata'if. There are some highly relevant and little known facts related to Sha'ban that we want to share tonight, and we'll mention them out of Mujahid. The first one is a hadith in which the Prophet said, the hadith of Abu Hurairah, Bukhari Muslim, he said, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين إلا رجل كان له صوم أو كان يصوم يوما فليصومه. He said, do not precede the fast of Ramadan by fasting a day or two before it begins, except an individual who was in the habit of fasting a particular day that let him or her fast. You all see that? So we're talking about fasting Sha'ban and fasting all of it, except what? A few days. Well, we have to add to that, or put in the context of this hadith where the Prophet said a day or two before Ramadan, you shouldn't be what? You shouldn't be fasting. Except the person, which means what? So the Prophet said, illa, it means what? There's some exceptions. One exception the Prophet actually mentioned in what? In the hadith. And the second one we'll mention, it's also understood from the hadith, but not explicitly mentioned. The first one is, as the Prophet said, a person who's in the habit of what? Fasting. So the first thing we take from the hadith is it's forbidden, and this is the opinion of the majority of the scholars of Islam, it is forbidden to fast a day or two before Ramadan, except, and there are two exceptions. Number one is the Prophet said a person who's in the habit of fasting a particular date of the week. So let's say for the sake of argument that Ramadan comes in this year on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and a person's in the habit of fasting Mondays and Thursdays. It would be perfectly fine for him to do what? Fast on Monday. Even if Ramadan ended up being on Tuesday. Or it ended up being on Wednesday. Yom or Yom, right? Yom, a day or two. Because let's say that Ramadan was going to start on Friday or Saturday, and a person was in the habit of fasting on Thursday. They could go ahead and fast. If it was going to be on Saturday, same thing. Y'all see that? The second one, which is not mentioned but is understood from the hadith, is if a person had made an oath to fast, and he was going to fulfill that oath on the day or a day or two before Ramadan, he could do that. And also if he had some remaining fasts from the previous Ramadan. Y'all see that? If a person can fast a voluntary fast, like Monday or Thursday, a day or two before, the Prophet said don't do it. He could certainly fast an obligatory fast. You guys see that? You see how that works? And an oath is an obligatory fast. You've obligated upon yourself to fast this day. And likewise, a day from what? The previous Ramadan that you haven't made up yet is an obligatory fast. And so if you can fast a non-obligatory fast, you can certainly fast an obligatory one. So these are two exceptions. ثم بعد ذلك اللطيفة الثانية, the second important little known fact that we'll mention is the Prophet said in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, he said, إِذَا انتصف شعبان فلا تصوم. رواه الخمسة وأحمد واستنكره. There's a hadith reported that the Prophet said, do not fast after the midway point of Sha'ban. This hadith was written by Al-Khamsa, which is Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, and Ahmad. وأحمد استنكره. Ahmad was of the opinion that it was what? It was not a good narration. It was not an authentic narration. He istankarahu, he disapproved of it. He didn't consider it strong or authentic. So there's a few points about this because many people, when you talk about fasting the entire month of Sha'ban, they'll push back with this hadith. The Prophet said, once you reach the midway point of Sha'ban, you should stop fasting. So they push back. They say you can only fast 15 days from Sha'ban. And then how do we reconcile between that and the fact that Aisha said that the Prophet كان يصوم شعبان كله إلا قليلا. The Prophet used to fast the entirety of Sha'ban except what? A few days, right? Here or there. So the way that we respond to all of this, and the way that we reconcile it, is that first of all, most of the great huffaz, most of the great custodians of hadith, like Ahmad and Rahman ibn Mahdi and Al-Razi'in and other great scholars of hadith and huffaz, people who have memorized hundreds of thousands, even millions of the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, have graded this hadith as what? As weak. They consider the weak narration as a Tirmidhi, as Ibn Hajar, he mentioned was Stankarahu Ahmad. Ahmad considered what? An unacceptable hadith. The second thing that we say is the vast majority of scholars in general say, in Sahih hadith fala yu'mal bihi. They say that if this hadith is authentic, it is not to be acted upon. This hadith is not a hadith that the scholars consider to be something that we practice, we put into practice, if it's authentic. Last but not least, Al-Tahawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, in Sahih hadith fahuwa mansukh. He said, as soon as the hadith is reliable, it is what is abrogated. So this hadith, it should not deter us or discourage us from fasting as much as we can in Sha'ban, even after what? After nisf, after muntasif or nisf of Sha'ban, even after the midway point of Sha'ban. Al-Latifa al-Thalitha. The third one is there are a number of narrations from different companions of the Prophet Muhammad that carry this meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the midmost night of Sha'ban, He descends. He descends and he forgives وَيَغْفِرْ لِجَمِيعِ خَلْقِهِ. He forgives all of his creatures on that night. إِلَّا مُشْرِكٍ أَوْ مُشَاهِدٍ. Except an idolater, somebody who commits shirk, or mushahid, somebody who's holding a grudge against his brother. There are a number of riwayat, and this is important too, because it tells you, just in general, we're going to talk about in detail the response to this or what the scholars have said about this in these narrations, but it's important for us to be careful with the holding of grudges. Be very, very careful with that. Sometimes two brothers, and I mean here brothers in Islam, they have a falling out. They disagree about something and they fall out. And they let that thing that they fall out about, they can fall out about something as simple as I invited you for dinner and you didn't come. I invited you for dinner, you didn't come, you didn't text me or call me to let me know that you weren't going to make it. You didn't excuse yourself. And I had people over, you didn't come. And I just felt like it would have been at least, from common courtesy to, excuse yourself. And a person whole is mad about that and stops talking to another Muslim brother because of something like that. Al-Muhim, according to this hadith, and there's another hadith similar to this, similar to the meaning to this, where basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on every name or khamis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a weekly accounting of a person's deeds. And Allah forgives everyone except one. Except a mushahid, somebody who has a grudge against their brother. Okay? And so I say all this to say is that a lot of us really, really have to, especially as we get closer and closer to Ramadan, the month of Tawbah, the month of atonement, etc. It's very important for us to kind of do that self-inventory and cleanse our hearts of any grudges toward anybody else, because it can have what? Spiritual effects. It can hold us back. It can be a barrier between us and forgiveness in general. Okay, and there are other hadith to this effect. But let's talk about this particular hadith about the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descending on the midmost night in Sha'ban. So there are a number of riwayat from a number of companions with this meaning, that convey this meaning. One of them is from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. There's also another one from Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. There's another one from Aisha radiallahu anha, conveying this meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends on Laylatul Nisf min Sha'ban. So the scholars of Islam, they differ, the scholars of hadith specifically, they differ about the authenticity of these hadith, and the hadith that convey this meaning. And in one of the narrations, which was collected by Tirmidhi, he said this. He said, سَمِعْتُ مُحَمَّدًا يَعْنِ الْبُخَارِ يُضَعِفْ هَذَا الْحَدِيث. At-Tirmidhi said, who was a student of al-Bukhari, he said, I heard Muhammad, meaning al-Bukhari, يُضَعِفْ هَذَا الْحَدِيث. Consider this hadith to be what? Weak, that Allah does want, He descends on the midway of the midmost night in Sha'ban. Also, from the contemporary scholars, one of the greatest scholars of the contemporary age in hadith, Al-Albani ta'ala, also yudha'if, he considers the hadith not authentic. That's the first one. But let's say, for example, because there are other scholars who consider it authentic, let's just say for the sake of an argument that the hadith is authentic, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does indeed descend on the midmost night of Sha'ban. And let's just say for the sake of argument that He forgives the jami'i khalqihi illa mushrik or mushahid. Does that hadith indicate that there should be some special acts of worship in general, or particularly Qiyam al-Layl, that a person should do specifically on this night? That he targets this night and singles out this night for ibadah in general, or singles out this night for Qiyam al-Layl? The hadith doesn't say that. And there's no indication that the Prophet ﷺ singled out Laylatul Nisf min Sha'ban for Qiyam al-Layl, and there's no indication the companions did that either. Now just think about that. If this was a night that people should be keen to offer Qiyam al-Layl, the Prophet would have been the first one to tell us that and to do it himself. And his companions would have followed suit. But since we have no indication that they did that, that should give us pause. And we should always want to do things. There's no a person should make Qiyam al-Layl every night. This is the way of the believers. That they get up at night and they pray at night. But to specify one night, a person does not generally pray Qiyam al-Layl, but this night he makes a point to pray Qiyam al-Layl. He shouldn't do that. Because that is what puts us in the realm of bid'ah. That's what puts us in the realm of innovation and heresies and doing things from the religion that are really not supported by the evidence. But number 4 from the life. Al-Hafidh ibn Rajab, he mentioned that many of the Muslim scholars from the early period referred to Sha'ban as Shahrul Qur'an. Shahrul al-Qur'an, the month of the Quran reciters. And he mentioned that one of them, Amr ibn Qais al-Mala'i, كان يقبل على القرآن ويقبل على القراءة في شعبان أو لما دخل شعبان أقبل على القرآن. That as soon as Sha'ban would come in, he would turn all of his attention to reciting the Quran. As if to say, and Ibn Rajab mentioned a list of different early Muslims who were of this opinion, that it's as if you should use Sha'ban as an opportunity to what? To get in the habit, get accustomed to what? Reading the Quran. So when you get into Ramadan, reading the Quran every day and reading it often is what? It comes naturally. There's no effort because you've already kind of prepared yourself. It's like a person's going to run a marathon. You can't just show up. You can't just show up on the day of the Boston Marathon and you're just like, I'm ready. You can't do that, right? You got to start preparing for the marathon, weeks and months beforehand. Y'all see that? So the same thing. It's like those early Muslims, they called Sha'ban Shahrul Qur'an because they would use Sha'ban to do what? To train themselves. So that when Ramadan came, reading the Quran was what easy for them. Reading the Quran a lot. You got to figure some of these early Muslims, like Shafi'i and others, they would make a khatma. They would complete the reading of the Quran every day. Every day. How do you get to that point? Again, like I said, you're going to run a marathon. You got to do what? You got to train yourself. And so that's what they would do in Sha'ban. The last but not least, I want to talk about, I wanted to go beyond the fawaid. So, at the end of the khutbah, I was trying to make a point, and I was trying to tie everything we had said about the fawaid, the fast, and Sha'ban, tie it all in, and look at the whole thing from a different perspective, and make people see or feel incentivized a different way. And I don't know how well I did that. I don't know when I left, and I'm reflecting on it, I just felt like maybe it went over some people's heads. And I was worried about the way that it was delivered seeming like what? Like finger wagging. Like basically saying to the community, you're the problem. And that wasn't what I was trying to say. But rather what I was trying to say was basically that oftentimes we talk about like the virtues of this, that, or any other good deed. Or we say, for example, that X was the regular practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and since he is our role model, we should what? We should be regular in practicing it. So typically we would talk about some type of virtuous deed in this way. And for most people that moves the what? That moves the needle. But even then, we often don't think beyond the virtue and consider other implications. So a lot of people, it's enough for them to know the Prophet used to do this, or the Prophet said whoever does this will get this reward. That's enough for them to just do it. And when they're doing it, they may or may not think about that. But if they do think about it, that's all they think about. They're thinking and the way that they think about and consider the deed that's virtuous, it's limited to that. That I'm going to get this reward for it, right? Or the Prophet did. But there's one implication, what I wanted to kind of bring out in the end of the khutbah was that there's one implication that we should consider, and many of us don't consider. And that is the correlation between our deeds and our condition. I wanted to tie those in together. Like, feel incentivized, feel motivated to do this because it can impact our condition. Our beliefs and our behavior influence the circumstances Allah decrees for us. wanted people to understand that. Because why? We often lament. Sometimes we sit together, we talk about, for example, our own individual circumstances, our familial circumstances, our domestic circumstances, our communal circumstances. You know, things are not things here are pretty good, but they're not perfect. We can point out faults and things that we could do better. Things that people do that we don't like. People think the things we do that people shouldn't do, and they should know better. They should know that they shouldn't do those things. And also our global circumstances. Right? We turn on the TV and we see that a man was gunned down, shot in the back 6 times by ICE. We see a man, the police were called because allegedly he was trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. And a police officer comes and puts his knee on his neck for over 9 minutes and kills him right there in front of everybody. We see people being genocided, ethnically cleansed in Gaza to this day, and they're not talking about it anymore. There was 2 years where TikTok was not owned by Zionists, and it was 24/7 capturing the genocide. And it was inspiring people. It was motivating people to speak out. And they didn't like it. So they bought it, and now what's happening in Gaza went from front page to what? Page 19 and just what? Small print, a few paragraphs and lines about how they're starving people. And it's winter, and people don't have homes to stay in. And the buildings that are still in some type of repair, they're blowing up those buildings. They're destroying them. There's a group of people who paid billions of dollars to be part of an organization that's going to turn Gaza, their plan is to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the East. You see that? But nobody's talking about those things. But we find nuggets here and there. And when we lament these things, we see these things and we lament them, but we seldom draw a straight line between these circumstances and how we conduct ourselves. And so, at the end of the khutbah, what I was trying to do was offer another type of incentive. I was trying to basically say, oh brother, oh sister, oh fellow Muslim, oh fellow believer, if you don't want to do this, you don't want to fast and Shabbat, you don't want to exert yourself because you're trying to save your energy for Ramadan. You don't want to do that for your own self, for your own relationship with God, to draw closer to God, to improve your relationship with God, to become one of His near and dear ones. You don't want that for yourself. Then do it for the world. Do it for the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُو عَن كَثِيرٍ. Whatever masa'ib, whatever calamities are occurring around you, they're occurring because what? Because of what man has reaped of sin. You say, for example, how can we have the president that we have? How can we have a thug and a monster in the White House? You say that. Maybe you say that, maybe you don't, but I say that. How can this happen? This is not who we are. No, it is who we are. Because if it wasn't who we are, He couldn't rule over us. He couldn't get in that position. If people didn't think like Him and act like Him and want to do, even if they don't do what He does, they wish they could do what He does. The corrupt things, the amoral things, the immoral things. As the early Muslims, they used to say, as you are, so will your leaders be. Our leaders are always what? A reflection of ourselves. Nobody can say that's not who we are. That is who you are, because He couldn't rule over you. If everybody was good at heart, really believed in God and practiced right and wrong that we all know and accept as right and wrong, morality that we all accept as morality, He couldn't rule over us. Y'all see that? And these things wouldn't be happening. There's a direct correlation between how people behave and the circumstances that they find themselves in. And so I was trying to call people's attention. This is another incentive. Do it for the world. You're tired of people being murdered and deported by ICE and roughed up and American citizens being detained. And you're tired of that. You're tired of opening your feed and that's all you see. You're tired of hearing about the Epstein files. You're tired of hearing about Syria being bombed and Lebanon being bombed by the same people, bombing everybody. You're tired of hearing about an armada of ships being moved in the area where they can shoot missiles and kill people in Iran. You're tired of that. Are you tired enough to be a part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem? So that was the message we're trying to convey at the end. I don't know how well we did that, but hopefully what we said tonight cleared it up and made it clear what we're trying to say. It's just important for us all to see how we're a part of that equation. We're just, it doesn't mean that people are bad. You're bad, I'm bad. It doesn't mean that. But we can always be better. We can always do more. And if we are better, and if we do more, and we do more ourselves, and our families do more, and our community does more, and better, the situation will change. We will move the needle. Allah says that He will change the condition of people when they change themselves. We have to believe that, and we have to do that. And so that's what we're trying to get to. And with that, I bring my remarks to a close. And if there are any questions, comments, or critiques, we will take those out of the local social
I think from the message that what you delivered, I think that's for me personally.
Oh, you're listening to this work today.
That's exactly what I understood from what.
Oh yeah, we're in business today.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So yeah, alhamdulillah. So for me, that's exactly what I kind of understood from what you were trying to say in the khutbah. So I thought it was a great khutbah.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah accept. I was worried because I just felt like.
No, I mean for me, personally, that's what I got, because when you're relating the relationship between fasting and being pious and the corruption, it relates to exactly what you were trying to say to me. To stop corruption, first of all, you have to stop yourself.
Subhanallah.
تفضل
Elijah. Okay. You sure? You want to speak loud, Abdul Razak?
The people online.
Yeah, the people online are going to get mad at me. So we'll go Abdul Razak, then we'll go Elijah. Elijah, let Abdul Razak go first, and then you go.
On the last point, I get it, the point.
Yeah.
Some of us are foreigners and we're immigrants. Okay. The way let me speak about myself. I'm an immigrant here. The way I see things being done, there's always the risk to think that, okay, this is not a Muslim country. I'm here, my family are here, I live here, but generally, the nation itself, we don't have much impact of practicing Islam and influencing the political system. So there's always the risk that we sit back, watch what's happening, we complain amongst ourselves, and distance ourselves from it. Because again, if you look at it, this is a Christian country. They don't want us here anyway. So I'm trying to understand how, as Muslims and immigrants, how the fasting that you mentioned, or the influence that we can play, that can really affect or change the situation of the nation itself, since we're very minorities position, and our religion is not generally practiced. We see quite a few Americans become Muslims. But if we're in Saudi Arabia now, we actually totally relate to what you said. Totally Muslim country. Totally Muslim country. But with the country in the United States, we not having any influence at all in how the political system works, can we really influence something? I mean, I know Allah is in the world. Limited the power of Allah. How can we relate to that, to see that our individual action can make us be part of the solution. And I understand we can individually play a part in our neighbors, co-workers, in general terms, to change the situation of the country. Because we know what is being done to our Muslim brothers and sisters. And we feel angry. And that anger sometimes for me, it boils to the fact that sometimes we want to cost the whole, just want to cost the whole system. And also there's a fear that, okay, the punishment of Allah is going to come down. Like if you heard in Islam, Allah will start with them because they didn't do anything. So the Muslims amongst them. Because you feel angry. But this you can't do anything about it. So how can we influence the outcome, as you mentioned, based on the individual things they do?
Okay, so I have
my question is.
No, it's 100% clear. I got two answers for that. So the first one I would say is that yes, we're talking about the importance of doing the deeds, doing the good deeds, and being better humans and better believers, better worshipers, and that will affect change. We're saying that. That doesn't negate that we have to do other things. That we have to use all the means at our disposal. So sometimes that may be being involved in the political process. That may be a means at our disposal. There may be other means at our disposal. So what we're not saying is that we should just come to the masjid and worship Layla Nahar, night and day, and just hope for change. No, we actually have to what? We actually have to use whatever means at our disposal at any given time, depending on the circumstances and what the circumstances allow and what our religion permits, to what? To affect change. In addition to what? To being better human beings. That's the first thing. It's the first thing I want to say. So sometimes it might be a political process, it might be other means that are at our disposal. Additionally, when we talk about being better, being the type of Muslim that Allah will aid, we mentioned the ayah where Allah says, Allah will give victory to those who give victory to Him. Give victory to Him how? Allah explains. He says, الَّذِينَ إِن مَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. He says they are the people who, when we put them in authority over anything. So, for example, authority over this mission. They are the people who what? They enforce God's law on their own selves, and they apply God's law in the area of their sphere of influence. They're not the people who are doing the opposite of God's law in a place where they were given authority. You see that? When we do that, Allah says, Allah will give victory to the people who do that. Right? They establish prayer. They give the zakat. They command what they enjoin what is right, forbid what is wrong. If they do that, Allah will do what? Give them victory. Allah will give it to them. They won't give it to them, to their own self. They won't secure it for their own selves. Allah will give it to them. And we see this throughout history, particularly in the early period. We see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people who, when you look at their situation versus the situation of those who are opposing them, you say, there's no way these can beat these. There's no way that this person can get out of this situation. This person, it's over for them. There's no hope, you would think. If you just look at the situation itself, you remove Allah and His infinite power from the equation. You say, there's no way this person can win. There's no way they can escape. There's no way they can succeed. But time and time again, for those early Muslims who did exactly what Allah said, right? They did what Allah said. They applied what Allah said. They obeyed Allah. They worshipped Allah. They were sincere to Allah. They made sacrifices for Allah. You see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time and time again, He got them out of those sticky situations. He says, whoever fears Allah the way he ought to be feared, does what He commands, avoid what He prohibits, Allah will make a way out for him from every difficulty. And He will provide for him ways he never could have imagined. Miraculous ways. Prophet is dead to rights in his home, surrounded by mushrikun, one representative from every tribe, all of them with a blade, intending to stab him lethally. They're waiting. There's only one way in and only one way out. And the Prophet ﷺ, Allah was with him. Because he was the Prophet ﷺ. He was the most obedient of all of Allah's obedient servants. Comes out of his home and does what? Sprinkles some sand to the air. And they don't see him. He walks right past him, close enough to walk, they go, boop, and they didn't see him. Similarly, when he made hijrah, and he and Abu Bakr, instead of going north, they went south, and they hid in the cave. And the story goes that the mushrikun came looking for them. They had some leads or some clues, and they had an idea, and they went looking for them. And they stood over the cave, and if they had just looked down between their feet, they would have been seen. To the point that Abu Bakr said, they're going to see us, they're going to see us. And the Prophet said, Inna Allah ma'ana. They won't see us. And they didn't see them. They did not see them. They were right there, but they didn't see them. Again, why? Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you, nobody can be against you. Similarly, on the day of Badr, same thing. It's like we have to, and you said it yourself, Allah can do all things, no matter how hopeless the situation looks. If we just do our part, and that's the thing too, is we have to, and I'm not saying that you don't, I'm just saying in general, I think the Muslims, we have to have faith, real faith in God. If we just do our thing, Allah will do the rest. Allah will do the rest. How does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in Surah Al-Imran? He says, In tasbiru wa tattaqu, la yadurrukum kayduhum shay'an. He says, if you are patient, if you patiently persevere, and you fear Allah as you ought to be feared, their plots will not harm you in the least. If Allah is with you, nobody can be against you. So this is what I meant. We don't have to worry about the how of it. How is it going to happen? We just have to know Allah will aid those. He promised He will aid those who conduct themselves like true believers. They do the good deeds. One of them, obviously, being fasting in Sha'ban, but that's not the only deed. It's just an example. And what I want us to do, the reason why I said all of that toward the end, was I want us to draw a straight line between, look, being better will move the needle, it will improve your condition. If you don't do it for any other reason, if you're not motivated to do these voluntary deeds or obligatory deeds for any other reason, do it because what can change the world. All of us feel something about what's happening. Whether it's maybe you're not moved by Gaza, but you're moved by what ICE is doing. Maybe you're not moved by what ICE is doing, but you're moved by what's happening in India, what's being done to Muslims in India. That's not being spoken about, but it's happening. You're moved by it. Whatever it is that bothers you, know that you can affect change in that. If what? If you just do your part as a Muslim, if we just do better. And Allah promises victory. Promise victory to the believers. If we're not getting victory, it means we're not fulfilling the shart, we're not fulfilling the condition, we're not truly believers, we're not behaving like believers, either because we lack faith that Allah can do it, or because we believe He can do it, but we're just not going to do our part. That's basically what we meant. تفضل Elijah.
A situation happened to me in this match.
You sure? Because they can't hear you online. Man, you kind of got that very white, man. So you gotta,
Hello. Yes. After this match, he was Ramadan. He was preaching, and this brother said, "Oh, yeah, the kids them running around the place and making a lot of noise."
Mm-hmm.
So I said to him, "I said, why don't you control the kids? The man is preaching, and nobody can listen because the kids are making a lot of noise."
Mm-hmm.
So he took it to heart. So I went to sponsor it. I was sponsoring lunch. Now one lunch was sponsored 2 lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want to get the meat with gravy. He said, no, you ain't getting no gravy here. I said, what you mean? I said, I'm paying for this.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go through me first. And I look at him. I said, where you was when we used to play in school? We never massive. I used to play in school. I said, I was back at this place.
Yeah.
I started the lunch here.
Yeah.
But I don't care. You got to go through me first. So I said, well, I want to see Bashir. So Bashir said, I said, you got to go through me. I said, okay, I'm not going through you. I just don't need you. I was wrong for not being because I believe for for the blessing of Allah.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
But the way we talk about authority, Allah he get a kind of authoritarian that he think he can do what he want, and he wasn't nowhere around it.
Eh.
So I just don't need to do it. But then I started thinking, I said, you know what? I don't need my blessing from him. My blessing coming from Allah.
MashaAllah.
What I got is Allah blessed me with.
Eh.
So I want to see my share that wait for Ramadan and make it do 2 lunches, two meals
Eh.
for the brothers and sisters.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
I want to listen to him because he can't give me no salvation.
Eh.
So that's what you're talking about authority. They get a little authority and they think they can do what they want.
Jazakallah khair. I appreciate that, Dr. Rahim. I do want to say, just to comment on what you shared, I just want to say that, so there's 2 things. One, so one of them is, Allah says, الَّذِينَ إِن مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Those people who we give them authority in the place, any place on earth, no matter how big, no matter how small, we make them in charge. Authority is a test, man. It's a huge test, and it's a test that most people fail. As Allah says, إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. That mankind typically he's a transgressor, and he's ignorant, and he behaves ignorantly. Right? And so, in many cases, when we're put in a position of authority, we abuse that authority. And people like you, the people who don't have authority, they suffer because of it. And the person who's the pious leader is rare. It's a rarity. And that's why the pious leader gets what? Gets so much reward. Because of his piety, because of his commitment. It's so easy to compromise your faith when you're in authority. And there's so much incentive to compromise your faith when you're in authority. And so when you don't do that, and you sacrifice whatever material benefit you can get by compromising your faith, Allah gives you more reward. He gives you rif'ah and He raises your status. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that I appreciate the fact that you said to yourself, you reflected and you said, you know what? I'm getting my blessing from God. I'm going to do the right thing, irrespective of how this person talked or treated me. I appreciate that response, but that does not absolve the person who said that to you if what you say, if the story the way you relate it is 100% accurate, because we're all human, we can make mistakes, but if what you say happened the way you said it, that doesn't absolve that person from guilt. It doesn't absolve that person from being at fault. This is very, very important. There's a balance. That I may forgive a person who transgressed against me, who trampled my honor, who mistreated me. I may forgive them. That doesn't absolve them of what? Of guilt. They're still wrong. And unfortunately, when you have a power dynamic where somebody's in a position of power and somebody's in a position of weakness, this person, the person in a position of weakness, is always expected to what? To just pardon and forgive and to accept being mistreated. To accept being treated poorly. And it shouldn't be like that. That basically the person can forgive, he can pardon, he can seek the reward of Allah for forgiving. But at the same time, that doesn't absolve this person. We can't just say, well, he forgave, so it's no big deal. No, this person who did that has to be held accountable, has to be brought in, because again, this is part of what? Part of what we have to work on and improve. Part of being true believers. True believers don't do that to one another. When things like this would happen at the time of the Prophet, he would never let it go. If you guys remember the hadith of Abi Dharr. Abi Dharr, he called a man of dark skin, he called him Ibn Sawda, son of a black woman, or son of a black mother. And he said that as an insult. And he was in a position of what? Power. He was in a position of power. This was what? This was his slave. His servant. And they got into an argument, and he said that thing. And he said it as a pejorative. He said it to insult him. He said it to put him down. And he came and he grieved to the Prophet. He said, hey, this happened. He said this to me. The Prophet summoned him. He didn't say, oh, just forgive, just pardon, just let it go. He said no. He summoned him. Then he asked him, did you really say that? Did that happen? Like he said? He said, yeah. He said, he said, yeah, Rasulullah, that's how we do. When somebody insults you, you insult their mother. He said, that's how we play the game. The Prophet said, yeah, brother, إنك أمر فيك جاهلية. He told him, he said, you're a man with ignorance. Even though the prophet had, at other points in time, he had spoken highly of Abu Dhabi. Talked about how he thought highly of Abu Dhabi. But in this moment, he told him what? You're wrong. You're bad. He took him to account. He didn't just let it go. This is very, very important too. I just want to make sure I say that because a lot of times something like this gets said, and we just say, "Oh, well, you forgave, alhamdulillah," and we leave it at that. No, the person who said that shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't behave like that, and something like that shouldn't be tolerated. Because again, it goes back to us not living up to and behaving, conducting ourselves in the way that believers should conduct themselves, and the way, by extension, that will entitle us to Allah's aid. Allah doesn't want us to conduct our affairs like this, and when we do, it's just another thing that deprives us of the right or the entitlement to be aided by Allah. You see how the Prophet conducted himself in that situation. He dealt with it. He told the person they were wrong. He didn't just let them just get off of it because, you can just forgive and let it go. He didn't do that. So I just want to make sure I said that.
You see what, Iman? You the person that you bring relief to anybody else that comes to you with a complaint. You will listen and you will try to resolve it. You go to the brother who decided, I said it's leaders or whatever it is, they don't listen to you. They take side. And go to this other brother's side and know they go to run. Allah ain't gonna talk to me no more because I stand up to myself. I said, listen, I respect you. You are not letting you disrespect me.
Yeah.
We are both fight.
Don't fight. Yeah, don't fight.
I say, you know what? This is the host of Allah, but anywhere else, me and you will get into it real good.
Yeah.
Because I got upset.
Yeah.
But if one complain to the two brothers, they don't do nothing.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that it happened, Rahim. I really mean that. I really am sorry.
I started this launching thing here. I started here. When anybody can tell, I started this launching. I've cooked. I make launching for a whole month by myself with my money. And then you get the kiosk come in and you tell me, you gotta go through me first. And I pay for these things. I pay for them. If I want gravy on the rice, I pay for it.
Yeah.
But I just got upset and I think and I say, you know what? I was wrong to try to be upset and try to fight him. And, guys, I was mad. Yeah. But that's how I do this for the blessing of Allah.
But two things can be true at the same time. You could be wrong, and the person could be wrong too. This is what I'm talking about. Yes. You could be wrong, and the person could be wrong too. And everybody should take responsibility for the wrong they did. It shouldn't be that the onus is on you to just forgive and pardon and let go what happened to you. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry, Ibrahim. I'm really sorry to hear that. Elijah will give you the final word, inshallah. Final word.
I wanted to start off with one word. That word is consciousness. Surah 103, the time of quoting in the English translation, right? Indeed, mankind is out of laws, except for those who by faith do righteous deeds and guide one another to truth and guide one another to patience. Patience is something that's lacking in this nation. As you said, our leaders reflection of us, not us individually, but us collectively. When you look at the statistics of this nation, and this is what I mean by consciousness, I was conscious to look this statistic up. I was conscious to look this statistic up. I'll say it one more time. I was conscious to look this statistic up. There are over 20,000 murders in the United States every year. Over 20,000. You do the math, that's an average of 65 murders in this nation a day. As a Muslim, it is our duty to be conscious. But there are things, inventions in this nation, as a people, that has truly declined our consciousness as natural human beings. The first one is television. And the second one is this new age smartphone. You could go on Google once again. Consciously, I looked this up. 1980, the average adult, let's say young adult, the average teenager, had an attention span of 12 minutes. Fast forward 40 years later, the average teenager has an attention span between 8 and 12 seconds.
Wow.
So with that being said, I encourage everyone, even I will say I challenge everyone, to take less time from your phone. Take less time from your phone. Bring more time into your home of unity. Spend time with your children, parents. Spend time reading with your children. Spend time playing checkers or spend time playing a game with your children. When I was a child, I remember playing games with my parents. Games like Mancala, games like Connect Four, games like Chinese checkers. This was very important. Eat as a family. We ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a family when we were at the table. Not one person in one room, one person in another room, one person in another room. And then you wonder why people cannot get along. It starts at home. My brother told me his children had two PlayStation 5. I said, why? Why do they have two? Oh, that way one playing, one other can play. I said, hey, brother, no. That thing needs to go. I told him that. He's not my biological brother, that's my brother. I said, brother, no, that thing has to go. 1 month later, the PlayStation 5 had already broke. One of them had broke. I said, hey, that's it right there. And to the brother here, you don't have to worry about anything. Once you've forgiven in your heart, the judgment for the other person, it no longer concerns you. I had a situation. Could have ended up like the guy you said with the counterfeit $20 bill. I had a situation just like that. My supervisor, she called police on me. Police told her, they said, hey, man, this is a within company discrepancy. We can't do anything to this young man. He's on the clock. He belongs here. You said he's not being disruptive. He's not showing any type of aggressive behavior. You just have a simple discrepancy. We can't do anything. But we know where we live at. She's an older white woman. I'm a young black man. She starts crying. One of the police officers decides to be the alpha man, tries to remove me. I told him, don't touch me. And I just swung his arm off of me. Next thing you know, he bases me. He catches two of his partners. They go down. I don't even drop. He catches me directly. They go down. I don't drop. I look at both of them. They drop. I said, man, I could easily, I'm not a weak man. I could easily hurt both of these men. But I say something to myself, just restrain, because you don't know the things that go. I leave out the company in handcuffs. I lied to you not. There were 25 police cars all lined up. 25 police cars lined up. 1 week. If I would have reacted out of aggression, I don't even think I'd be talking to you today, and I put that on my own suit. Fast forward 2 years later, one of my fellow employees, who I work with, he seen me walking one day to the store. And I see him passing sometimes. He says, Elijah. I come over. He said, I want to let you know that supervisor, the woman, she had a nervous breakdown, very bad. She had to go to the ER. My words to him were, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't concern me. And what I mean by it doesn't concern me, not that I'm not concerned, but I have nothing to do with it. I remove myself from that. So why you decided to share the news with me, I don't know. But those are just my words, and I moved on. So the thing that I'm saying is that karma comes around for everyone. And you don't need to hold any type of grudge in your heart about anything. Even when people wrong you, you don't hold no grudge for them. If anything, you ask forgiveness for them. Patience.
All right, anybody else go once? Go twice.
That's up for Shabbat.
Yeah.
So you might now please people pray meow.
Miyat rak'ah. When do they start? What time do they start?
Yeah, after Shabbat. So they pray all through.
For all through the night.
100.
100 rak'ah.
That's
Wow. Wow.
so this is part of the it goes on with that.
Wise guy.
I'll be there.
The Dominion crew. This is the watch out for
That's
this.
it. That's it. I'll be there.
So what do you want to do? Because it's not from the Sunday. Someone wants to build, let's build.
Exactly.
Barakallahu feekum, ya ikhwan. Thank you all for coming. Barakallahu feekum. We'll see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. La ilaha